It's that time again.
Yep. We are Team West Herr.
And you are the most important thing to us.
Team West Herr.
Podcast. It's all about the team.
Welcome back to another episode of the Team West Herr podcast. I'm Brad Gelber, joined today by Matt Lasher. And we have a very special guest. We're kind of switching things up a little bit. You might, if you followed along the series to this point, we've pretty much had it be a football kind of related podcast here. But now that we're in the off season and enjoying what's almost summertime, we're going to branch out a little bit. And today we are actually joined by a very special guest, West Herr's Director of Inclusion, Equity, and Diversity. Made sure to write it down so I'd get all the little names right. Latricia Davis. Thanks for joining us, Latricia.
Thanks for having me.
So, obviously, I think it makes sense just for the viewers, people watching, listening. It sounds very professional, but if you talk a little bit, just, like, who are you and, what do you do here at West Herr?
Well, who am I? That's always a loaded question, right?
Very loaded.
Because it's based on perspective.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a woman who has a passion to empower, to equip. But I'm also really passionate about advocating for people, right? So I'm a defender of diversity and an advocate for inclusion. And that has been the breadth of my work here at West Herr, being able to ensure that we are creating a culture around inclusion. So it's a little bit.
Yeah, sneak peek of much more.
Yeah, much more to come. Latricia is maybe one of the most well-rounded employees we have at West Herr. So it's going to be an interesting 30 minutes or so as we get to know you a little bit, get to know your story, how you came to West Herr to begin with. So we're really excited to get to know you, and we're trying to get to some of the truth of the matter, I think.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, so, you said, that's kind of maybe your elevator pitch if you had to explain who am I on paper, a resume there. But, you actually have a really interesting background, I think, how you got to West Herr. And I think that's probably something in the community that happens more than people realize. You have a good experience with West Herr. You buy a car at West Herr. You know someone who works at West Herr. And flash forward a few years, and now you're working at West Herr yourself. So, I know a little bit about your background, but why don't you talk about, what was your first ever experience back well before you actually worked with West Herr?
Well, let's see. I bought my first Saturn Vue in 2006 from West Herr.
Those cars were the best.
They
Plastic,
were the best.
You couldn't get door dings in them, right?
These things last forever. We had, honestly, until last year, that car ran without any issues. Can you imagine the car running for 16 years and you just keep driving it? Well, of course, I wasn't. By that time, it became a college car. But that was my first encounter. So over the years, I've experienced customer service and what it was like to be on the other side as a customer here, a loyal customer, I would say, after all that time. And I bought every single car that I had. But one of the things that kept me coming back to West Herr was the way they made me feel when I was there as a customer. I felt valued, seen, and heard. And didn't even know that's what they were attempting to do, but that's how I was being treated with that highest level of customer service. So, obviously, my work as a consultant and working in government, I started my career early in government, working in education. And when Matt talked about being well-rounded, I mean, who does that? Who starts in government, goes to education, and then eventually branches off to do their own thing? That was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to serve more people. And so that was the opportunity for me to be able to get into the community, work with organizations who really wanted to be change makers and do something incredible and have an impact in the world. And here I am.
Latricia, one of the things that I think is important for people to know about you is your family and what you're all about sort of outside of the professional realm. And because I think that's a really inspiring balance that you have. It's not just, you're this monster professional, which you are, right? But there's also this other side to you, which you're very supportive of, of your family. So maybe just give us a little insight into, that side of you.
Oh, well, I am a wife. I have an amazing husband, Herr Davis Jr. Got to shout him out because it is important to have a supportive partner in the incredible work that I'm doing. So him and I, we do work in the community. We have a faith-based organization where we serve the community internationally and locally. We do that work. And we have adult children. So I'm a mom of adults, which is very, very different, right? Being able to do all of these things and still navigate the needs of adult children who are saying, I love you being my mom, but I don't necessarily need you to do these things. So I've had to kind of make some adjustments. But it's exciting that they have been a part of my journey to watch me transition in my career, and now doing something that I absolutely love. I get to travel nationally. So I am a public speaker, and I tell stories live on stage and engage people through my own personal journey of perseverance and resilience and not backing down and giving up that executive seat. I had to fight for, where I am now in my career by not giving up and not really limiting myself because someone else saw me as limited.
Now, I have two questions as a dad. I have two questions for you. Okay, so I got 4 little kids, right? Your kids are grown now. So they say, small kids, small problems, big kids, big problems. Does that resonate with you at all? Or?
Oh, yeah, it's different. Well, here's the thing. It's funny because when they were younger, of course, we do everything as a parent to make sure that they have the tools they need, social skills and just independence. We want all of that for them. And as they're growing up, they make mistakes and we guide them back. Well, when they become adults, we have to kind of stand back and say, oh, I sure hope I got that one right when they were young, because they're going to need that now, right? And so you see your children who are adults now making those decisions, and you see, wow, they were listening. Wow, they did get it. Or me showing them my life, the transparency of the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of life, because there were difficult moments, things that I didn't get right. Yep. Sharing those types of ththings too. You see it as adults, they start to implement those things. They're learning, they're watching.
Right.
So I would say for the small little ones, watch what you say, because they're listening. So when they start repeating it or doing what you're doing, you're like, Dad, I got that from you. Mom, that's you, right? So, so I hope.
Well, I love that vulnerability, and I think that's one of the things that people connect to you about, because you're willing to be truthful. Now, the other thing related to your family, before we got on air here, we were talking a little bit about your husband. You're at this thing at Microsoft doing this speaking engagement, and your well-dressed husband just happened to be kind of in the neighborhood, right? He was ready to participate with you on stage, was he not?
Oh, yes. My husband was ready. He stays ready. And that's what I love about, having that diversity, the diverse type of exposure to life, right? So he is in the faith-based community. He serves as a chaplain for this region, ECMC. He's a director of pastoral care. Well, he has a different perspective on life because he serves all faiths. So his conversation is different. He approaches life different. So when you come to him with a question, I always say, if I went on a game show and they were like, who is that one person you would bring to the table and ask that question? It's him. Because I know at least he's going to find a reference and he's going to come to the table ready to perform, ready to share, his heart, his story, and even the exposure that things that he's been exposed to, he's willing to share that too. So it's incredible to have a partner in life, right? And he is my best friend. So most people say we're a power couple. Hey, we just doing life. We doing what we're here to do. Purpose-driven couple. That's what we are. I
think I see him outside, actually. He's trying to get on his podcast.
Right. He's coming in, y'all. No, it's okay.
I think, too, something just getting to know you a little bit in your time at West Herr, and there's obviously a lot of different impressive things about you. You've spoken on some of them, but you also have another business that you work in. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, just because I think for people watching, maybe we all have different interests or passions or things, and sometimes I think people a go-to maybe is well I'm too busy. I'm too busy I got work, I got kids, I got this and that. I don't have time to go do this other thing I'd love to do, and you seem to make it happen. So what's your other business that you work in as well?
Yeah, I've adopted this model of having dynamic balance. And that's literally the things that are most important to you and giving it your full attention when the time comes. So can we do everything at the same time? Absolutely not. Not effectively anyways. So I'm a collector of beautiful things. I love fashion. Mm-hmm. And I've always had a desire to create a space for women to come and be confident and know that there is a place for them and that they can find things to make their, adorn their body with. So jewelry, accessories, and things like that, clothes. We love all of those beautiful things, right? So what do? You open up a boutique. So I have, obviously, you got to do something with this passion. And so I opened up Intro Lifestyle Boutique. It's in the Galleria Mall, which I'm really excited about. We are going into our first full year in June. So we've been open a year and we are thriving. It's a beautiful location. It is more than just a retail space. We created it to be an event space, so it's multi-purpose. Mm-hmm. So we have book clubs, signings in there. We have birthday parties. We have girls' nights out. We have mom socials, mini brunches. But we try to make it a place where if someone is looking for a unique, intimate venue and they don't want to go to a restaurant, but they want to encompass and be surrounded by some things that they really love, they can come to our boutique. So we've created that. I understand that e-commerce is taking over the world. And so the traditional way of doing business, you have to be innovative, you have to be creative, and you have to be open to hear what the community wants. And what we know is that the best thing that a woman can wear is her confidence. And so I'm excited to be able to do that, to help them get that confidence back and to say, girl, you've got this. You're beautiful inside and out. Even in the dressing rooms, I put, inspirational words up. And then when they're changing their clothes or getting ready, they look and say, you are beautiful. You are confident. There's no better person to do this but you. So we leave those hidden messages all throughout the store.
I really love that, like, self-love angle, and then also like the community side of, gathering. Yeah, all ties together, right? So, we've touched on a little bit, this consultant, the speaker, dynamic speaker. We've touched a little bit on, your entrepreneurial roots with the boutique. We touched on the fact that you're a wonderful mom and wonderful wife, just dynamic person. I definitely want to transition into like your role at West Herr as the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. And I think before we get into that, I just want to sort of set up, the stage here. Not that we want to go back to this era, but like beginning part of 2020 was a pretty trying time for everybody in the whole world, right? Obviously COVID, started rocking the world. But at the same time, there were some dramatic events that were happening in the social fabric of the community, like George Floyd tragedy that happened, along with countless others examples, where just this idea of systemic racism, this idea of, discriminating behavior, whether it's overt or sometimes not even understood, started to become this like cultural awakening, if you will, right? And I think that's if I put us back to that 2020 period, and Scott and I and Beth and all the directors of the company, we're having serious conversations about, what are we learning as we're observing these things happening right in front of us and in our own communities, and obviously Buffalo was rocked with another racially driven tragedy later down in the timeline, but I think of before Latricia Davis ever came to be at West Herr, this sort of bubbling up of this issue, some of these issues that really you push against, fight through, support, teach, educate around, is really kind of how I see, the door sort of magically opened. But all great things at West Herr start with Scott, right? And I think Scott and you connected at some point. So why don't we start there, and then we can talk about maybe your role as director.
Well, you know what? That story is really amazing because, again, I was just, going and traveling as a consultant, and there was a lot of demand for the work. People wanted to have the conversations. So I was going to those organizations, and so I wasn't looking for a company that wanted to just check off another box. So when I encountered him, actually my first encounter was with JC, and he was the person who we met out in this random act of kindness that he demonstrated for me. When I was getting materials and trying to load my car, this gentleman comes up and he's got West Herr on his tags, and he's, in position. And anyone who knows JC knows that he's a person who is just kind at heart. That's just who he is. So when he came to support me and help me get my car locked down and get everything that I needed, we started having a conversation about it. And he said, hey, have you ever considered? And that was the conversation. And so I went and I met with Scott first. I did meet with him. I met with Beth, actually, and we started having this deep conversation. And it was all of the things that they were desiring to do is right where my passion was. It was less about, hey, come in and fix this. And it was more about, is there a way that we can be better at what we're currently doing? How can we take our values and be able to ensure that our employees feel seen, heard, right? And then for me, it was always about inclusion. Mm-hmm. Everyone was focusing on diversity only because it's diversity, equity, inclusion. That's how you hear it. Now belonging has been added to that equation. But most companies were just saying, we want to be more diverse. Mm-hmm. But what about equity and inclusion being at the end? That was the last thing that people were thinking about. So when we had the conversation, I said, I can only say yes to this if we're going to focus on inclusion first. Because if people don't feel included, there is no way that we can attract other people. And even looking for more diverse candidates, which we do that now. And then ensuring that we have equitable opportunities throughout the company. We do that as well. Mm-hmm. But that inclusion piece is so critical for people to say yes to a company like Herr, but more so say yes to themselves. And that's really what we want to do. Who doesn't want to be included?
Yeah, I love that self-empowerment. I mean, we've had some conversations, just you and I, about some of the truths of the auto retail business. You know, there's some gender dynamics. Most auto groups are male-dominated. There's all sorts of issues related to, well, why is that the case, right? It could be just this bell-to-bell behavior where it sort of becomes discriminatory towards women, right? So if you're expected to work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., it's hard to fulfill maybe a standard gender role at home as the mother or caregiver of kids, right? So like all of a sudden you start boxing things out. Or a lot of our employees are technicians, and there's comes sort of a male stigma behind that. Right. And then you get into some of these black and white divides in terms of access to career paths and how you can go down some of these channels. And there's some really challenging, uncomfortable truths behind all that. But I think what's so amazing is while Scott and Beth and the leadership teams trying to think about how do we manage 3,000 employees? That's a really tall task. Right. And how do we guide, educate, lead people in a spirited way? But having somebody with your talent, having somebody with your ability to command a room. So I know there's just three of us talking here now, but you know, Latricia also does our new hire orientations and leads us in a lot of other ways. It isn't just diversity. It isn't just inclusion even, but you're a dynamic leader of our team, right? And so you've really embraced that role, as overwhelming as it could be at the start, right? You know, you and I talk about, what are you going to get done? You can't go to 40 locations. You know, how
I remember that
this?
Conversation. You're like, how are you going to execute this?
Right.
I said one location at a time.
And two, I thought something, I remember we talked last year around this time, and you expressed inclusion being one of the reasons you felt comfortable joining Herr, because you saw another female leader in Beth as almost like a role model or someone you could see, okay, well, they're not just talking about it, like they already have a very strong woman in leading the company. And, you know, maybe talk a little bit about kind of, you know, what Beth meant to your journey here and how that kind of like amplified what you were trying to do at Herr.
That's a great question, because my first encounter with Beth, I was so impressed with her. I was impressed with her journey, how long she had been with the company, but really about her forward thinking. And that was really impressive. Of course, when an organization has a woman that is in leadership with a passion for the people, and then to have her pulse on the culture and the community, and then say, let's give them what they need. Let's work together to ensure that our employees have the resources and that they feel like there is room here for them, because there is. And then for them to feel confident, comfortable enough to raise their hand and to stand up and say, this is the area that I'm struggling with. And now, Latricia, here's resources for you. And when I had that conversation with her, she was like, this is what we're here for. Like, this is not just a one and done. It's a continuous work. And so I stepped back and I looked and I'm like, okay, I can do this and I'm willing to do this. And there is an opportunity here for me to stand in my full authority, because the expertise that I bring was something fresh, a fresh perspective. Although I had been a customer, I had never worked in the world of automotive, and it is very different. And so it was taking on the understanding that this is a different industry, but when I looked at the bottom line, we serve people. And that's the thing that was easy, made it easy to say yes.
And, you know, we talked a little bit about, I think, broadly what, you know, your role is with Herr, but in terms of like specific initiatives or events or things you've done, like there's been a lot of them in your time here, and I know you, and I know there's going to be a lot more. But maybe what is like something recent or in the last year or so that you've been really proud of, and what are you looking forward to as we, you know, continue along the way here?
Well, I am really excited about some of the milestones. We have partnered with the HR department to ensure that our hiring practices eliminate any bias or unconscious bias. So we've been, you know, soliciting and getting more insight from our employees to find out, what do you need? What is it that we're missing when it comes to attracting the kind of diverse talent? So that's been exciting. But what I'm most proud of is our diversity roundtable, because we have taken some of the brightest and finest throughout every single location and pulled them into one room, sitting around the table so we have representation from all of our employees to say, you know what, we do have unique differences. And we are experiencing the culture here very differently. But guess what? At the end of the day, we all want the same thing. So how can we get into the community and to ensure that we're serving at the highest level? We have incredible impact. West Herr is a household name, not just because we sell a lot of cars, but because we care. And so that is something that we're doing. We're making sure that our West Herr Care initiatives have volunteers, that we're aware of those volunteer opportunities. And it's not just one event that we partner with, but we give a lot to the community. And so getting our hands out there, volunteering, and in those type of events, we're excited about doing that. And the other thing we've done is launch employee resource groups. Any organization that is committed to really their diversity inclusion efforts, they have to increase their ERG groups. So those resource groups are important because the community comes together, a specific community of people come together that are like-minded, that have the same desires, same goals, or even the same challenges, and can come into a group, talk about those things, but also not just talk about it, but come up with solutions that work for them, and then they can communicate that back to leadership, and then we can make decisions according to what these groups are telling us that we need.
Well, I can think of like a specific example that I don't even know if you're aware of, but we have, and this is a real practical example at West Herr about who we are, but our technicians have a group of technicians that care about their world, their role, their challenges, you know, the stuff they face as being a technician at West Herr, and they get together. I think they meet monthly, and then at least quarterly, Scott's involved directly with that employee resource group, right, to talk about the issues as it relates to, you know, the lights in the shop are too dim or the shop's too hot, you know. And so, you know, one of the outcomes, like last summer, I think it was last summer, right? Maybe 2 years ago, we put air conditioning in every shop, which is not something that like Buffalo, New York was typically something we would be used to, but it was as a result of the feedback and just understanding like our teammates are going through this type of situation, right? And they're talking and giving feedback. You know, one of the things I've learned from you and it really inspires me all the time is sometimes some of these topics are sensitive. People get uncomfortable. They're not sure how to talk about them. But, you know, you've really come to our company with this lens of like owning your seat at the table, right? Whether that's your own self-empowerment or just, you know, just having that belief that you have something to contribute, right? And I think West Herr really wants to embrace that, and I think we do, and I think we can do more of it. But if there's anything like in terms of words of encouragement, maybe for West Herr employees or people that are just like, you know, in their own company outside of West Herr, what would you say to those folks about seats at the table?
Oh, you know, I love that. That's
What
my
a perfect
topic right
setup.
there. That's you set me up there, Matt. I think that you have to know that wherever you sit at the table, that is the head of the table. When you come into a room and you're invited. So here's the thing. Verna Myers says this best, that diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. But belonging is dancing as if no one else is watching. And so when you have all of these aspects and you know that you're invited to the party, but now that you're here, don't necessarily wait for somebody else to ask you to dance. Get out there and dance as if no one else is watching you. That's how you own your seat at the table, is that you know what you bring. You should know. That self-awareness is so important. Mm-hmm. There's something unique and special about every single person that is here on this earth. Mm-hmm. There's something that each one of us are here by design to do, to complete. And it is our responsibility to be able to do that in a way where we operate from a full power. There is no other Latricia. I'm good with that, right? There's no other Matt. There's no other Brad. But understanding that everyone else is taking, so you might as well just be the best version of yourself and execute from that place. And when you're sitting at that table, come in ready to listen and then add value. But don't just add value. Position yourself to act. Do something. It's important that we don't just look at it and say, oh, that's great. It was a great meeting. And don't walk away saying, how can I improve what we're doing currently? How can I add value? And what responsibility can I take to ensure that we just keep getting better and better and better?
I love that. I mean, this idea that like it's far easier to complain than to sort of take action. It's far easier to criticize than to just own it and try to do something. And often, we'll get ideas of what we should do or can do or, how it would be better. But all of us are empowered to sort of take that idea, and maybe it's not the whole company. Maybe it's you just do it in your department, in your world, right? Like if you're a cashier at the Subaru Orchard Park store. Well, maybe you just start with the other cashiers, and maybe that little seed grows into something else, right? And so all of us have that opportunity, right? It's not just waiting for Scott to say, "Hey, let's go."
Yeah, and I think something too, though, like. Well, we write a series here called Wester Wednesday, which highlights different employees throughout the group. We've expanded it now to Technician Tuesday, same sort of deal. It's like an employee spotlight type of thing. And one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what's your favorite part of working at Wester? And, you'd be surprised. These aren't prompted questions. I don't feed them information we'd like to hear, but how many of them are similar responses. And I think that's a testament to maybe the culture at Wester. So I want to pose that question to you. If you had to pick, maybe, what would you say is probably one of your favorite parts about, now being, as you said, on the other side of it, actually working with Wester?
I would say two things. The people. We have some extraordinary people that work here. I have never experienced that at any other company, any other organization. I mean, we really have people who are passionate, who love being here. It's a joy, really, to come to work every day, because it doesn't feel like work when you're doing something that you're making, which is an impact. That's why I love Herr, because the impact that we're making on each other. The community, of course, that's a given. But how am I impacting you? How are you impacting me? How do we continue to impact each other so that now we're concerned about each other's life outside of Herr? To be able to say, I know there's more to Brad. I know there's more to Matt. For us to be able to have real conversations off camera to say, hey, how are the kids doing? What's going on? How's your wife doing? And okay, what are you and your husband up to next? Like, just those real conversations, the people and the impact that we have on each other also gives us an opportunity, of course, to have an impact on this region and the world.
And you mentioned the region too. I just, as in our attempt to get to know our employees better, to get to know you better, everyone has a different reason I think they enjoy living in Western New York or being part of the community, as you just said. Wester has a big presence in the community, but I'll put you on the spot. If you had to maybe pick your favorite part about being part of the Western New York community, beyond just Wester, beyond, your job, what would you say that is?
The culture, arts, and food community here. That does it for me. I mean, that summarizes it. Just, we have such a rich culture here, and our food is amazing. I travel all over the world, and when I come back, nobody else can make buffalo wings like us. So, I mean, we just have, that community aspect of what is here in Western New York, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. No, I love that. And, I think as we attempt to wrap up here, I thought it would another fun kind of question to pose for you. What's maybe something that people watching, listening, Matt and I, maybe your husband, even your kids, what's something, probably not your husband because he probably knows pretty much everything there is to know, but what's something maybe the average person doesn't know about Latricia? If they just met you and they know who you are, what you do, but what's something maybe they wouldn't know about you?
They probably wouldn't know that I love to cook. I love to prepare meals for my family. I'm really good at it. But my favorite is baking. Mm-hmm. I bake the best pies. Maybe, eventually I could do a pie business. Like when I retire, maybe pies. But pies are my specialty. I love baking pies.
Is there like a go-to flavor? Like what's the...
So my go-to flavor is I make a peach cobbler pie, which is absolutely mouth-watering. Yeah.
It's also lunchtime now.
Yeah,
so
I'm
it
ready.
is.
I'm
I know,
ready
right?
for
You're
it.
getting hungry. Sweet potato pie, and then cherry pie. But my husband is like, cherry pies are only for me. So, but it's off the table. But I love making desserts. It's fun to watch. I put a call out, a text out, and I say pies will be ready in an hour. And I got a line down the driveway for people waiting to get their pies. So that's one thing most people don't know about me, my passion for baking. And I just love to do that and feed people.
Well, we've actually had a chef when we did this show during the season who came on and he cooked for us on air some sliders. So maybe next time we have you on, you can be baking a pie for us in the background, and or we can just start a cooking with Latricia show.
Right.
We've had a couple chefs. Chef Cuso, shout out to Chef Cuso. Chef Darian, part of Team West Her long ago, a couple seasons ago.
So the next iteration of the chef.
Chef
cooking.
Latricia.
Hey, come on, let's do it. Let's do it.
So the last thing I just wanted to kind of ask you too, if people are interested in learning more about, what it is you do here or being part of West Her or making some of these changes that you're looking to make in the community at West Her, how can they, get involved or find out more about you or the initiatives you're working on?
So if they're looking for more about me, always go to LinkedIn. I have a profile on LinkedIn where I highlight some of the work I'm doing. But also being connected here, just email me, ldavis@westher.com. Is always a great way to do that. And I love when people reach out because they say, hey, this is what I'm doing. There's so many opportunities in the community that we're not always aware of. And we want to be able to participate. Our Roundtable Diversity Group would love to do that and volunteer. So those are things that we don't know. Let us know. Reach out and share resources. That's what it's really about. If they're training, definitely training needs that organizations have. Maybe there's partnerships available for us to do that. I don't have to do everything, right? Collaboration is critical in this season and this time we're in. And so always looking for opportunities to collaborate and to just share resources.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you having
Thank
on
you.
today. You're an awesome first guest as we kind of, like I said, move on beyond just football and into kind of, I say this all the time, and if people watch this or they've heard this, it's probably like, okay, we've heard this, but Team West Her is not just our football concept. It's really everyone at West Her. We're all part of Team West Her. If you're a customer, an employee, you bought customer, I said, but an extension of the community as a whole is Team West Her. So thank you again for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you on here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Latricia.
And,
thank you.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for tuning in today to the latest episode of the Team West Her podcast. We'll see you next time right back here.